The Grand Council chamber was silent, save for the soft hum of energy swirling through the room. Representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations sat in a massive circle, each face grim and thoughtful. This was no ordinary meeting. The galaxy was on the brink of something that could change everything. At the center of the room stood the elder alien, a figure frail with age but powerful in her presence. Her eyes, deep and wise, locked onto the council members, each one staring back at her with varying degrees of impatience. "You do not understand," the elder began, her voice steady but urgent. "The humans are not like us. You cannot measure their strength by the size of their fleets or the power of their weapons. They are different. They are a force unlike any we have ever encountered." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the air. "If you provoke them, if you attack them, they will hunt you down, and they will not stop." A murmur of disbelief swept through the room. A younger council member scoffed, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. Humans? A backwater species struggling to even master space travel. What could they possibly do to us? We've conquered entire worlds without breaking a sweat. His words were met with quiet nods from the others, all of them dismissing the elder's warning as nothing more than superstition. The galaxy had always been a place of power, and they had never feared anything. Why should they start now? The elder's face hardened. "You do not understand. They are not just survivors. They are hunters. They will fight with everything they have, and they will adapt. Their capacity for revenge, for violence, it will be the end of us all if we do not act carefully." But her words fell on deaf ears. The council had already made up their mind. The order had been given. The humans had been marked for destruction. Their resources were valuable, and the alien civilizations that had long coveted them would not be denied. A plan was set in motion, a full-scale attack on Earth, the home of humanity. The elder's warning was nothing more than a distant echo now, easily drowned out by the arrogance of those who had never truly understood the humans. The next day, the fleet assembled. It was massive, a coalition of alien forces who believed that they were the galaxy's finest. Each ship, a marvel of engineering, was designed to wipe out civilizations like Earth with ease. Their weapons were powerful, their shields impenetrable. They believed they were invincible, that nothing could stand against their might. After all, they had destroyed countless species before. Why would humans be any different? The elder watched the preparations from afar, her heart sinking with every passing hour. She could not stop them. Not now. She had tried, but the council had made its decision. The fleet set out, leaving behind a trail of light as they sped towards Earth. The elder knew what would happen next. She had seen it in the stars, in the patterns of fate that only she could decipher. The humans would fight back, and they would make the invaders pay. As the alien fleet approached Earth, the first warning sign came in the form of a strange, quiet signal, a human distress call. But it was different. It wasn't one of desperation. It was something else. The humans were ready. They were preparing for the fight. But no one in the council listened. They were too sure of themselves, too convinced of their superiority. On Earth, the first signs of the invasion were subtle. There were no grand displays of violence, no immediate battles in the streets. The humans had always been a resilient species, their strength lying not in their size, but in their unity. They quickly began to organize, to form a resistance. The leader of this effort was General Lucas, a man not born into power, but one who had earned it through sheer grit and determination. He had seen conflict before, and he knew the danger when a threat like this approached. He did not wait for orders. He acted. And he knew that the Council's decision to attack Earth would be their undoing. The aliens landed on Earth with all the force of a storm. Massive warships descended from the sky, their guns primed and ready to unleash destruction. The ground shook as they made contact, their troops flooding into cities, their weapons cutting through the chaos. It was the beginning of what the Council thought would be an easy conquest. But they were wrong. The humans didn't panic. They didn't crumble under the weight of the alien assault. They fought back. General Lucas, leading the charge, watched as his soldiers took their positions. He had trained them for this. He had prepared them for the impossible, and now, against all odds, they were ready. The first alien soldiers were met with human resistance that they could not predict. They were not fighting an inferior species. They were fighting back with a rage that only those who had fought for their survival could understand. The alien forces, despite their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers, began to falter. The humans were quick, resourceful, and relentless. It wasn't just about fighting back, it was about making the invaders feel their every move. The fight wasn't just in the streets, it was in every human heart. And as the battles raged on, the Elder's warning, though ignored, began to echo in the minds of those who had underestimated humanity's spirit. It was too late for the Council to turn back now. The invasion had begun, and they would soon learn the true cost of ignoring the humans. The alien fleet descended onto Earth like a storm, shaking the very foundation of the planet. Warships, colossal in size, blotted out the sky, their weapons ready to unleash devastation. The cities below were unprepared for the sudden assault, their defenses woefully inadequate against the overwhelming force. The sound of explosions filled the air as entire neighborhoods were obliterated. Yet, amidst the chaos, humanity did not break. General Lucas stood atop the hill, watching as his soldiers scrambled to prepare for the unimaginable. His mind raced with calculations and strategies. The aliens were relentless, their weapons unlike anything the humans had ever faced. But the general knew something that the invaders did not. Humans were not just survivors, they were warriors. And warriors always fought back. The initial clash was brutal. Alien troops poured from the ships, their advanced armor gleaming as they stormed the streets. But what the invaders did not expect was the human resilience. From every corner of the earth, people rose up. They fought not just for survival, but for their right to exist. They fought for the future of their world. General Lucas had anticipated this. While the rest of the world was focused on preparing for a conventional defense, he knew that the only way to defeat this enemy was to think differently. The aliens were a powerful force, but they were also arrogant, dismissive of humanity's true potential. The general's plan was simple: hit them where they least expected. Humans did not rely on massive fleets or overwhelming technology. They relied on ingenuity. The resistance, led by the general's command, took to the streets with a singular focus: disrupt the alien invaders at every turn. They attacked supply lines, sabotaged alien technology, and ambushed small groups of alien soldiers. The invaders quickly learned that humans would not be easy to eliminate. In fact, the more they pushed, the more resistance they met. As the battle raged on, something changed. The human fighters, though outgunned and outnumbered, began to adapt. They scavenged alien technology, using it to their advantage. They created traps, weaponized their environment, and learned to fight in ways that the aliens couldn't predict. What had started as a desperate attempt to survive quickly turned into a terrifyingly effective counteroffensive. The aliens, who had initially swept through Earth's defenses with ease, now found themselves caught in an unfamiliar and deadly game. Their superior weapons and advanced technology were no match for the guerrilla tactics employed by the humans. They had underestimated the human spirit, and it was proving to be their greatest downfall. Meanwhile, back in the council chambers, the news of the human resistance began to trickle in. At first, the council dismissed it as insignificant. After all, they had only attacked a single planet. Surely these primitive humans could not pose a serious threat to their empire. But as the reports continued to flood in, doubt began to creep into the Council's minds. The elder aliens' warning had not been in vain. The humans were not simply defending their world, they were hunting the invaders. The first real blow to the alien forces came when a small group of humans, led by a young engineer named Sarah, managed to infiltrate an alien command ship. Armed, with nothing more than their wits and makeshift weapons, they succeeded in planting explosives deep within the ship's core. The explosion was catastrophic, ripping through the heart of the alien fleet. In one swift move, the humans had crippled the invaders' ability to launch reinforcements. The alien fleet, already struggling, was now in disarray. But the humans were not done. They had sent a message, loud and clear. Earth would not fall without a fight. They would make the invaders regret their decision to attack. General Lucas, standing on the front lines, knew that this was just the beginning. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they would see what happens when you push humans to the brink. The general's resolve was unwavering. He had witnessed the horrors of war before, but this was different. This was a war for survival. The aliens had made their mistake, and now they would pay the price. As the days passed, the human resistance grew stronger. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, and engineers, everyone played their part. The alien forces, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves fighting an enemy they could not understand. The humans had become a unified force, united in their desire to protect their world. The battle lines had shifted, and the aliens began to realize that they were not invincible. In fact, they were far from it. General Lucas stood, tall as his forces continued to strike back. He had always believed that humanity was capable of greatness, but even he had underestimated how far they would go when pushed to the edge. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. They were fighting for their future, for their children, for their home. The tide of the battle was slowly turning, and the alien invaders, once so sure of their victory, now found themselves retreating. The humans were not just surviving, they were winning. The general's message was clear. The humans would not be defeated. They would not be conquered. And as the alien forces regrouped, preparing for another assault, they knew one thing for certain. They had underestimated humanity, and it was a mistake they would soon regret. The days after the first major strike were filled with chaos, but also a strange, undeniable sense of unity. Humanity, pushed to the edge of extinction, had begun to show something the galaxy had never seen before: a relentless will to fight back. As the alien forces regrouped and prepared for their next offensive, the humans didn't just wait. They reorganized, planned, and struck again, this time with precision. General Lucas and his team had seen the signs. The aliens, though powerful, were predictable. They relied too heavily on their technology, too confident in their superiority. Humans, on the other hand, had a different strength: adaptability. They could take what they had, turn it into something more, and outsmart their enemies. The aliens had made a grave mistake by thinking the humans would fold under pressure. In the heart of Earth's largest cities, resistance groups were growing. The once scattered human fighters now formed an unbreakable web, using their knowledge of the terrain and their superior understanding of guerrilla tactics to turn the tide. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about surviving in a way the aliens couldn't fathom. Every human who stood up to the invaders was a message: we will not bow. It was no longer just a defense. It was a counterattack. As the alien commanders scrambled to adjust their strategy, the humans had already anticipated their next move. The resistance fighters were everywhere, from the dense forests to the crowded urban sprawls. It wasn't a matter of numbers. It was about intelligence. With each victory, the humans discovered more about their enemy. Alien technology was advanced, yes, but it was still fallible. Humans were masters of improvisation, and every broken down alien weapon became the key to a new advantage. But it wasn't just the soldiers and engineers who were rising to the challenge. Scientists and civilians, once hidden behind the walls of laboratories and offices, were now joining the cause. They were building weapons, devising strategies, and researching alien technology. The sense of urgency was palpable. Earth had become a battleground, and every day was a new chance to outsmart the invaders. The aliens, once so confident, were now beginning to feel the pressure. They were losing their grip on Earth, and the humans weren't just making it difficult. They were making it impossible. In one small town, Sarah, the young engineer who had once been overlooked, found herself leading a team that had successfully hacked into an alien drone network. The drones, which had been used to scout and attack, were now under human control. The first strike, when it came, was swift and devastating. A squadron of drones, now repurposed, turned their weapons on the alien invaders, picking them off one by one. The aliens were too slow to react. They hadn't expected this. They had thought their technology was invincible. Back at the alien command center, the atmosphere was tense. Reports from the front lines were coming in faster than they could process, each one worse than the last. The human resistance wasn't just a nuisance anymore. It was a real threat. Alien commanders, who had once boasted about their superiority, were now scrambling to contain the situation. Their troops, once confident and well-equipped, were starting to fall back. Every new engagement was a reminder that humanity wasn't just surviving. They were thriving in the chaos. The humans were making progress in ways the invaders couldn't comprehend. They had taken the initiative, and now the aliens were playing catch-up. Their fleets were spread thin, their forces fractured. It was a nightmare scenario for the alien command. They couldn't ignore the rising power of humanity any longer. General Lucas, from his command center, monitored the situation closely. His soldiers were spread out, each one taking their position in the war that had become a battle for survival. They knew the stakes, and they knew what was at risk. The general's mind raced with the possibilities. With every alien force they destroyed, they sent a message. Earth was no longer defenseless. The humans had become hunters, and the aliens were now the prey. In a remote corner of the world, a group of civilian volunteers led by a former military strategist had devised a new strategy to combat the alien fleet. Using a combination of human ingenuity and repurposed alien technology, they had developed a weapon that could cripple the alien ships. It wasn't as advanced as the weapons the aliens wielded, but it didn't need to be. The humans were playing their strengths. They had learned to make do with what they had, to adapt, and to fight smart. The weapon, though crude, was effective. It disrupted the energy shields of the alien warships, rendering them vulnerable. The human resistance made a bold strike, infiltrating the alien fleet and planting explosives deep within their ships. The result was catastrophic. Several of the alien warships, once thought indestructible, were now burning wrecks drifting in space. The invaders' hopes of reinforcements were dashed. Back on Earth, the humans were not only fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future. Each victory brought them closer to the realization that they could win this war. General Lucas stood on the front lines, watching as his forces pushed forward. He knew the aliens were running out of options. The tables had turned, and the humans were no longer the underdogs. They had become the hunters, and the galaxy was starting to feel the weight of their wrath. As the humans prepared for their next move, the alien leaders had no choice but to acknowledge the truth. They had underestimated humanity, and it would cost them everything. The alien forces, once confident in their might, now faced the full fury of humanity. General Lucas had led his forces through countless battles, each more dangerous than the last. The humans, once considered nothing more than a footnote in the grand history of the galaxy, had now become a formidable force. The alien invaders were beginning to understand the true meaning of their mistake. On the front lines, General Lucas and his command group had witnessed what could only be described as the turning point of the war. The alien fleet, though still powerful, had been ravaged by the relentless attacks from the human resistance. The once invincible warships now drifted through space, their weapons useless, their shields breached. The invaders had underestimated the humans' ingenuity, their ability to adapt, and their unyielding will to fight for survival. But the battle was far from over. The alien commanders, desperate to salvage the situation, called upon their last, remaining reserves. Reinforcements from distant parts of the galaxy were rushing toward Earth. The human resistance had dealt a crippling blow to the invading forces, but the final push was still to come. The galaxy's finest were preparing for the last confrontation, a final stand that would determine the fate of both sides. As the alien forces regrouped, General Lucas knew that humanity's time to strike was now. The human resistance had proven time and again that they could withstand anything, but this would be their greatest test yet. The aliens, despite their losses, still outnumbered the humans. But the humans had something the aliens did not: a deep, unshakable desire to protect their home. The general could feel the weight of this responsibility pressing down on him, but he also knew that the humans would not fail. They could not fail. The final battle began in the skies above Earth. The alien fleet descended once more, their weapons charged and ready to unleash devastation. But this time, the humans were prepared. General Lucas had carefully coordinated every movement, every strike. The human fleet, though smaller, was equipped with weapons adapted from the alien technology they had scavenged over the course of the war. The humans were no longer fighting defensively. They were fighting to win. As the battle raged in space, the human resistance fought on the ground. The cities that had once been destroyed were now rebuilt, not in the image of the invaders, but as a symbol of humanity's determination. Civilians, scientists, and engineers all played their part in this final stand. They had seen what the aliens were capable of, and they had made the decision to fight back. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest veteran, stood united in this moment. The battle was not just for survival, it was for the future. In space, the humans were slowly gaining the upper hand. The alien warships, though vast and powerful, could not keep up with the speed and adaptability of the human fleet. General Lucas, from his command center, coordinated the assault with precision. He knew the enemy's tactics, their weaknesses. The humans' smaller ships darted between the alien vessels, striking with precision and then disappearing into the shadows of space. They were not fighting a conventional war. They were fighting on their terms, using every advantage they had. On the ground, the fight was just as fierce. The alien soldiers, once invincible in their advanced armor, now found themselves fighting against an enemy they could not predict. Humans, using their knowledge of their own planet, had set traps, turned cities into mazes, and made every street a battleground. They used the environment against the invaders, creating situations where the alien soldiers had no advantage. Humans were relentless, never allowing the aliens to rest, never giving them a moment of respite. The turning point came when General Lucas, leading a team of his finest soldiers, infiltrated the heart of the alien command center. The humans had learned everything they could about the alien fleet, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Lucas knew that this was the moment that would decide everything. If they could take down the alien command, they could cripple the entire invasion force. The assault on the command center was swift and brutal. The human soldiers trained for this very moment moved with lethal precision. They bypassed the alien defenses, infiltrated the inner sanctum of the command ship, and planted explosives in the heart of the enemy's power. The countdown began. The alien commanders, who had been so sure of their victory, were caught off guard. They had underestimated the humans, and now it was too late. As the explosion rocked the alien fleet, chaos erupted. The remaining alien forces without leadership and with their command ship in ruins began to fall apart. The humans, sensing victory, launched a final coordinated strike. The alien warships, crippled and leaderless, were torn apart in a series of devastating attacks. The humans were relentless, pushing forward with everything they had. The invaders had made their final mistake. The last stand had come, and the humans were standing tall. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, the humans emerged victorious. The alien forces, shattered and broken, had been forced to retreat. The galaxy's finest had been humbled, and humanity had proven that it was a force to be reckoned with. The invaders, once so sure of their superiority, were now scattered and defeated. General Lucas stood on the battlefield looking out over the ruins of the alien fleet. The humans had won, but at a cost. The war had taken its toll, and many lives had been lost. But as the smoke cleared, one thing was certain. Earth had not just survived, it had triumphed. The humans had sent a message to the galaxy: never underestimate them. As the sun rose over a victorious Earth, General Lucas knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that it could not be defeated, and now the galaxy would learn to fear the name of the human race. The galaxy had been set in motion by humanity's defiance. It had once thought itself unshakable, an empire of superiority built upon the subjugation of countless worlds. But now, as the remnants of the alien fleet limped back to their home systems, the galaxy's leaders were forced to confront a harsh reality. The human race was not the fragile species they had believed it to be. Earth had been their test, and they had failed it spectacularly. The once proud council members of the galaxy, who had laughed at the Elder's warning, now found themselves in a position of weakness. The humiliation they had suffered was felt throughout every corner of the galaxy. Their enemies, whom they had once looked down upon, had dealt them a blow that would echo across the stars. The humans had turned the tables. They had shown that, no matter the odds, no matter the strength of their enemies, they would never back down. As the humans celebrated their victory on Earth, they knew the battle was far from over. The war had been won, but the aftermath was just beginning. The galaxy, now fully aware of the humans' strength, would not let them go unchallenged. The news of the defeat spread like wildfire, and across the galaxy, other species began to reconsider their stance on humanity. Some, fearful of the humans' newfound power, began to prepare for future conflicts. Others, seeing the strength in humanity's resolve, reached out with offers of alliance. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. General Lucas stood at the front of a makeshift command center, now surrounded by representatives from all corners of Earth. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but not with fear. There was a new sense of purpose in the air. The human resistance had become a force too powerful to ignore. The once helpless, desperate humanity was now a beacon of strength. General Lucas, though a hero in the eyes of his people, knew that this victory was not one that could be enjoyed for long. The next phase of humanity's rise was on the horizon. The Galaxy's Council, shattered and humiliated, now convened in emergency meetings. Leaders from distant star systems came together in a desperate attempt to salvage what little reputation they had left. Some suggested more force, more destruction. Others called for diplomacy. But the whispers of a new galactic order were growing, louder. Humans had shown they could not only defend themselves, but also fight back with a ferocity that had taken the entire galaxy by surprise. An emissary was dispatched to Earth, a representative from a once dominant species in the galaxy, the Zorathians. Their race had long held power, establishing themselves as rulers over countless civilizations. They had witnessed humanity's meteoric rise and were no longer sure of their place in the galaxy's hierarchy. They needed to understand the humans, to gauge whether they could be controlled or if they would become a threat too great to ignore. The emissary arrived on Earth with all the pomp and circumstance of a species used to being revered. But as he stepped foot on the planet, he quickly realized that humanity was not a species that would bow to anyone. General Lucas stood waiting for the emissary, flanked by his top commanders. The meeting began with careful words, but the tension in the room was palpable. The Zorathian emissary, accustomed to being in control, now found himself in a place where his words carried little weight. "You were warned," General Lucas said, his voice calm but firm. "The Council thought it could push us to the brink, but we fought back. Now you want to talk, after all the damage has been done?" The emissary, uncomfortable under the weight of the general's words, tried to regain control of the situation. "We are here to discuss a new relationship. We are not your enemies, but we need to know if your people can be trusted. The galaxy is not just Earth. We are not a backwater planet to be dismissed so easily." Lucas looked him in the eyes, his expression unreadable. "Trust is earned, not given. Your council made a choice, and we paid the price for that. Now you will have to earn your place in the new order." The emissary faltered, his previous confidence slipping. The tables had turned, and the humans were now in control of their own fate. The galaxy had assumed that humanity would be easily crushed under the weight of its arrogance. They had not expected a fight. They had not expected a victory. Outside the command center, the world was changing. Earth, once a quiet, insignificant planet in the vastness of space, was now a power in its own right. The human race had risen from the ashes of the invasion, not only surviving but thriving. Their enemies had underestimated them, and the consequences were far-reaching. Reports from across the galaxy began to flood in. Some species, fearful of human aggression, began to fortify their defenses, preparing for a potential war they had once considered impossible. Others, eager to avoid conflict, offered treaties and alliances, hoping to gain favor with Earth's new leaders. The galaxy, once united in its dominance, was now divided. The power structure had shifted, and no one knew where the humans would go next. The Zorathian emissary, having failed to gain the upper hand, returned to his people with a grim report. The humans had proven themselves to be a force that could not be ignored. But even as the emissary delivered his message, the wheels of change were already turning. Earth was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. It was a dominant force, ready to shape its future. Back on Earth, General Lucas addressed his people. The victory over the alien invaders was only the beginning. "We have proven that we can survive. We have proven that we can fight. But now, we must decide what we want to be. The galaxy has seen our strength, but it is up to us to decide how we use it. We are not conquerors. We are not oppressors. But we will not be weak again." Humanity had emerged from the shadows, and the galaxy would never be the same. The reckoning had come, and the humans had made their mark. But as the stars looked down on Earth, the true question remained. What would humanity do next?